Chapter 7, Finances and Work. As I mentioned in an earlier chapter, I'm a hedonist. I seek pleasure over pain. So it stands to reason that the idea of work, at least in my mind, well, just sucks. I know many people on this planet enjoy work and are working in fields that bring them great joy. I'm not one of those individuals. I do not enjoy working in a cubicle, and I do not like answering to a boss. However, I did enjoy working as a consultant for 13 years until I traded freedom for security. I gave away my client list for an idea that wasn't necessarily my own. I take ownership of that decision because I made the decision, regardless of the circumstances that influenced that decision. Only in hindsight are the consequences of those decisions made clear. Now, 9 years later, I'm in a job I don't enjoy, planning an exit strategy to get out of my current career situation. I enjoy the freedom of being a consultant. I enjoy addressing customers' technical needs and providing proper solutions to make these organizations profitable, efficient, and productive. Not one day is ever the same as a consultant. Literally, it is an adventure. You never know what challenges or needs a customer has from day to day. From a financial perspective, I wasn't killing it. My lifestyle was comfortable. My profession and the freedom it provided were invaluable. I truly enjoyed what I did. Please don't misunderstand. I had many 72-hour weekends while performing forklift upgrades. However, it was exciting, challenging, and fun. Physically and mentally, it worked. However, when you enjoy something, I liken it to playing, getting paid to play with very cool toys. On the other side of that coin, I've been working in a structured environment for the last 9 years, working in a cubicle. The cubicle mindset isn't just your physical location within the building. When working for my organization, the operations aspect is siloed. I am restricted to a particular job function and forced to stay in my lane. Not fun. So I focus on different objectives to distract my mind. The cubicle scenario is detrimental to my mental health and restricts my problem solving skills and creativity. I'm boxed in, another version of hell. For most people, work isn't necessarily evil. My attitude toward work is definitely negative. As mentioned earlier, I am working towards a solution. I need to be careful and calculate the risks. I need to work and, like many people in my situation, have bills to pay. So patience is required on my part. As an IT consultant, I had many challenges and experiences. Most of my experiences were positive and allowed me to grow professionally, emotionally, educationally, and financially. I considered myself successful, not based on a bank account, but on the freedom I enjoyed. I mentioned bills earlier, and I think this is an excellent segue into finances. Before getting out on my own, I worked for an organization in Huntington Beach, California, as an IT administrator. I made a better than average income for the period, and I learned much during this time. Staying true to my nature, I didn't like having to report to anyone. I didn't enjoy having a supervisor who was less knowledgeable regarding technology. I didn't like answering to him or him telling me how to do my job. I was relatively young and my soft skills needed improving, no doubt. I had completed my undergrad program, been sober for a few years, and regained my privilege to operate a motor vehicle. By all counts, I was on top of the world for the time until I found myself unemployed, returning to my college job as a bartender to make ends meet. Even the most savage of beasts have to regroup and lick their wounds. Sound familiar? What was once the most incredible job while in school, bartending, quickly began to lose its allure. I wasn't making the same money as an administrator, and I had credit card bills, rent, car payments, etc. I quickly fell behind on my bills, struggling to make the car payments, and soon after couldn't make half the rent. Then it happened. My mother called and asked what was going on with the credit card bill. A few years earlier, my mother had co signed a credit card that I defaulted on, which was reflected on her credit report, and she almost lost the house she was trying to buy. Just like that, ignoring responsibility, not having an exit plan, and allowing my ego to blind me, I was in deep financial shit. Couldn't get unemployment benefits. The unemployment department response was the terms under which you were dismissed could have been avoided. Fuck. I was fucked. I had no one else to blame. The most humbling time of my life was how I spent the next few years. By the grace of God, I found a job working at the deli at a grocery store in Lake Forest, California. I crossed the picket line to get the job. Hell, I needed to get out from under the shitstorm I had created. At the time, I asked my girlfriend Dottie if she could loan me $333.10 to pay my car payment for that month. I then had to ask her father, Stephen, if I could rent a room in this house until I could get on my feet again. It took about 4 years to move out. God bless Steve, Irene, and their family. They had a lot of patience with me. Then the credit card situation. Well, mom bailed me out. She had to. She had a deal to close. That was the most disappointing thing. She trusted me and I let her down. I hated myself at the time, humiliated myself, and let down people close to me. I burdened others who had no real reason to help me. Only by the kindness and graciousness of others was I able to get back on my feet. While working the deli gig, I looked for IT jobs and found one as a traveling computer technician, the precursor to the Geek Squad, long before Best Buy bought them out. This is where I thrived. There was a lot of freedom in being a subcontractor. At the same time, running a business was a steep learning curve. Going from a W 2 employee to a 1099 was a difficult transition. I knew nothing nor understood anything regarding filing quarterly taxes. I was a financial neophyte. The struggle was real when trying to start up my own business. The school of hard knocks is unforgiving, so you must align yourself with the people who have done it before you. Since my financial life was in disarray, I made a few investments. QuickBooks to the rescue. The only problem was I had no clue how to use it. I know, you're asking, how can a computer guy not know how to use a computer application? However, the accounting language used in the application was another discipline altogether. Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki was a popular book at the time. I recall reading the book about him looking for a financial guy and realizing that if he, Robert, was making money, then the finance guy would make money too. If Robert is reading this book, help a brother out and add some clarity to the last reference. I'll leave my contact info at the end of this book. With that advice, I searched for a good bookkeeper. Loretta has the mind of a teacher. Shout out to Dave Ramsey. In the beginning, she managed my books, helped me find a good tax consultant with the teacher's mind, and most importantly, taught me the nuances of QuickBooks. She showed me how to create accounts, draft invoices, reconcile accounts, and run P&L and tax reports for the accountant. I'm not going to mislead you, the lessons were expensive financially. However, the lessons were invaluable. It's been several years since Loretta and I connected. She's retired now. However, I still use the application to this day in my professional and personal affairs. In 2021, I was on the hunt for a new accountant. I'm in the process of getting a new business venture up, in addition to filing taxes, so a good tax consultant is essential. I found Michelle. When I provided her itemized reports for my taxes, I received the best compliment. My new accountant, Michelle, remarked, I wish all my clients were this organized. I thank Loretta for teaching me the skills. The key point here, find people who will provide you with an education and pay them graciously for their knowledge. In turn, this will help you succeed. There seems to be a common misconception that success is measured in monetary terms. This is a fallacy corporations want to sell you. Success is subjective. You define what success is. For me, success is having good teachers in my life. This is how I was able to thrive despite my shortcomings. I mentioned in 2010 I purchased my first home in La Habra, California. This was a crazy time for real estate, coming from a monumental financial collapse due to the subprime market and questionable lending practices. Banks had no direction. Underwriters scrutinized every loan application like never before. They actually had to manually underwrite the loans juxtaposed to running them through automated software. Banks are in the business of making money, and the banks lost their asses between the period of 2006 and 2010. Stated income loans weren't the thing anymore, and I credit Loretta and her teachings that allowed me to provide the reports, financial history, and supporting documentation that satisfied the underwriters and closed escrow in May of 2010. Buying a home is an overly invasive process. As mentioned earlier, underwriters were scrambling and had to manually approve loans after dealing with the subprime fiasco. Work and finances are necessarily evil. We use money to complete transactions for life, groceries, gas, and necessities. On top of all the luxuries we desire, leveraging our credit and making minimum payments, or in my case, being unable to make the minimums in 2005. I had a storage unit full of junk and creditors on my ass, and I was becoming a burden to my family and friends. This was not a happy time for me. During this period, the teachings of the 12 steps really began taking root. Responsibility is vital. Fast forward 20 years later, I have a mortgage and no other debts. I don't consider myself frugal, but I understand what accounts receivable and accounts payable are. I do not make the mistake of paying out more than what is coming in. I leverage credit cards, although much like cash, it's a tool, nothing more. Through the lesson learned, I discipline myself to reconcile all my accounts and keep a watchful eye on my spending habits. An old Sicilian proverb my dad shared with me in adulthood goes something like this: only under the watchful eye of the owner will his horse grow. There's something lost in translation from Sicilian to English. The point is to keep an eye on your money and invest wisely in your endeavors, and you will see your wealth grow. Here are some things to consider moving forward. Are you living a Ferrari life on a Yugo budget? How are you contributing to your financial chaos in your life? Is keeping up with the neighbors and social media important? Everyone wants to be a rock star and live a glamorous life. How far in debt are you because you're chasing a fantasy? And what is your freedom worth? Are you willing to be enslaved by bad debt and credit cards? By the way, a few years after I cleaned up my credit and had some cash readily available, I received a phone call from my mom. She was in distress. My sister, then going to college, had an issue with her Saturn SL1. The automatic transmission went out and needed repairs. My mom, living on a fixed income, didn't have the funds available. Strangely, the repair bill was equal to the amount I had defaulted on 3 years earlier. My sister's car was repaired, and my debt to my mom was paid in full. Interesting how God works. Thank you, Mom, for your patience. It took a little longer than anticipated, but I got there.